So let me guess. More plants equals more yield? Sounds good, sometimes at least. Or less plants? Don't know, but let's take a look in this episode of No-Fail Hydroponics. Welcome, YouTubers, to another edition of No-Fail Hydroponics. This is Ape talking to you. Hope you all doing well. I'm trying some new things, new lighting. Not sure if it's washing me out, maybe making me look more yellow or more pale. And I've got a new background that I'm going to put some text on. Let's see how this works. See if you guys like it, or even see if I like it. But let's get started. Today's episode is about plant numbers. It comes from Renee in the 707, and Renee says, "Hey Ape, me and my boyfriend have 6 lights. We want to know how many lights per plant. How many plants per light should we have in our garden, in our setup?" And it's a common question. I get it all the time. It really depends. The answer really depends on a lot of things. So let's get right to it. First of all, I would ask somebody this: well, how many plants do you want to grow? Do you want to grow a bunch, or do you just want to grow one or a few? You usually have some kind of predetermined idea of what you want, and then that needs to be considered when you make your final decision. So first of all, you should have some kind of idea of what you think you might want to do. Along with that, there's some styles to consider, growing styles for indoor gardening and hydroponics. The sea of green, or the SOG technique. Sea of green, which uses a lot of little plants. The scrog, or the screen of green. Or some people just grow their plants larger, but in a single spear. Or are you going to grow more of a tree style, or even more of a bushed single plant style? It really depends. So, one thing to consider is it really doesn't matter how many plants I put under a light. Okay, did you guys hear that? It really doesn't matter. Okay, what does matter is your veg time. So, for example, if I want to grow one plant, as long as that canopy under that plant is full, I'll get the same exact yield as if I put 60 plants underneath that same canopy. Now, one plant grown under one light, let's say 1,000 water, we'll typically write up a 4x4 area. Let's say I use one plant, I use 4 plants, I use 6 plants. Those plants, or let's say in that given square footage, 4x4, if that canopy is full and not overpopulated, or I say full and not empty with a bunch of holes in it, if that canopy is nice and even, I'm going to get the same yield whether I use 1 plant or 100 plants. Okay, so yield is not determined by plant numbers. The limiting factor that determines your yield is the amount of light energy that you give it. And when I mean light energy, I mean whether you're using a 250 watt or 400 watt, a 600 watt, a 750, 1,000, whatever you're using, T5s, yield is going to be determined on light energy per strain. So if I grow strain A underneath a 400 watt, whether I grow 1 or 100, I'm going to get the same yields. Okay. Now, if I have another plant that's going to yield more because its genetics just is a heavy yielder, I'm going to yield more on that plant than I would on plant A, which maybe is a low yielding variety. But strain per strain, comparing apples to apples, it's not about plant numbers. It's more about light energy. So what is to consider? So if you're going to grow a few plants, here's an important point. A few plants means I'm going to veg more. Okay, more time to veg. It makes sense. If I need to grow a larger plant, I need to veg it longer. So if I'm going to go 1, 4, 6, 12, 16, 24, my veg time needs to be accordingly to those amount of plants that I have. Now, if I'm going to be one of those sea of green guys where I don't even want to veg, and I just pack up, 2 plants per square foot, 3 plants per square foot, 4 plants per square foot, veg time doesn't matter. I'm just going to get them wherever I get my cuttings or my clones from, and I'm going to flower them right away. Okay, some people do that. It's not as in style as it was back in the early 2000s, but some people still are doing the sea of green technique. So there's some things to consider. What are your resources like? Do you have an extra place to veg plants for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? Me personally, I like to do a pre-veg. And you guys have heard me say this in my other videos. I like to do a pre-veg anywhere from 10 to 14 days before I actually do a real veg. Okay, veg time in my actual garden. So do you have a separate veg area? Do you do any kind of plant manipulation? Do you do any kind of super cropping? Do you tie your plants down? Do you do the FEM technique to make your plants branch out? Those are all things to consider. Or are you just one of those guys that likes to, you prune it and likes to grow a 3.5 to 4.5 foot spear and pack them tight? Those are all things to consider along with your genetics. If you have a plant that likes to branch out, use that to your advantage. Okay, if that's what you want to do. If you have a plant that you love, that you wish its growing style was different, but you love the finished product, that's something you got to live with, and you have to do accordingly. If you don't know how to super crop, I'm going to tell you, it was one of those things I had my nose up in the air about until somebody showed me how to do it the right way. And super cropping is a big part of my pre-veg and my early veg to keep my plant numbers down and get my yields up. Okay, I'm also a guy who believes in more roots equals more fruits. So when I'm planting out my 4x4 area or whatever it may be, I use big pots. I won't go anything smaller than a 7.5 gallon container, and a lot of times upwards of 15 or 20 gallons. So a lot of times my pots are right up against each other. So it's whatever will fit. You're gonna have to be, and I use a cocoa or a peat mix. So that's what I do. You're going to have to decide what size containers and everything else you do. My containers actually kind of help make the choice for me. I believe in large containers, and I like my plants to just go 100 miles an hour all the way through what little veg I give them and all the way through flower. My plants are not root bound at the end of flower. That's just the way I do it. So again, consider your do you have extra space to veg? Is that something you can do in your routine? If not, then you may be one of those sea of green guys. If so, then you take that into accommodation of how that works for you. What are your skills like? Are you one of those guys that can have 99 clones cuttings without killing them in a couple days? If you're not, I mean, just be real with yourself. If you're not, and you're one of those guys that maybe you're better off growing 4 plants, 8 plants under a light, because that's all you can really handle. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. If that's what you can handle, maximize that and hone your skills for whatever plant numbers you use. If you grow 12, man, you make sure you get the best yield out of those 12. And you don't have to fool around with having 99 pots or 99 pieces of rockwool cubes. Maybe you just want to have 4 big pots you worry about, or 6 or 8, something small that you can give 100% of your attention to. A lot of times when these guys are growing a lot of plants, they come to me because when they're in week 3 or 4 of flower and they realize they done lost a dozen, they got a dozen holes in their canopy, that costs them money too. So that's something to consider. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode about plant numbers. If you have any questions, okay, feel free to email me, thehydroponicape@gmail.com. All my contact information will be on the next swipe after this here. But I hope I answered some questions for you. Again, it's not really about plant numbers. It's about light energy. And that's why in one of my previous videos, I told you I'm I'm really big on fresh bulbs. I don't use my bulbs for any more than 2 runs. So plant numbers, keep them in check. If you're a medical cannabis grower, you check your local legalities and keep yourself safe. Again, adios. This is Ape checking out, and thank you for visiting No Fail Hydroponics. See you next time. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and contact Ape at thehydroponicape@gmail.com.